What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Sector for Nerds. I'm Ryan Brower, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're still going to be doing a discussion video right here today on the channel, but it's going to be about a comic, about a Star Wars comic. Because as of right now, you guys, there isn't any new content coming out on Disney Plus like there has been as of late. So I've been able to do a lot of discussions on those latest episodes that appear on Disney Plus. You guys know how it works here on the channel. But because we don't have any new content coming out, and I do want to still have discussion videos on Wednesday because I like doing these types of videos, I thought, let's talk about some Star Wars content that's come before. And I wanted to do it on a comic, and I decided that I want to have a discussion about my favorite Star Wars comic, and that's the Star Wars Darth Maul, Son of Dathomir. It's a 4-issue comic that was going to be based off of 4 episodes in the Clone Wars animated series, but because that Disney canceled the show, we never got to see it in the animated show, hence why we've got it here in comic form. So there's 4 issues. So over the next 4 weeks, we're going to have a discussion about each issue of that comic, and I'm very excited to be doing that here on the channel with you guys. I hope you guys are excited for this as much as I am. And hey, if you haven't read this comic before, I highly encourage you guys to go and check it out. We'll do some in-depth discussion. So if you haven't read it or don't have access to it, you'll understand everything that's going on in the comic. I'll be able to better explain the story for you guys and talk about the things that I like, things that I didn't like, which would probably be nothing because I love this comic so much. But yeah, if you guys want to get this comic and want to hold off on watching this video until you've read it, that's perfectly fine. Go and read the comic and then come join the discussion here on the channel, because I'm very much looking forward to doing this, you guys, and hopefully you guys are just as excited as I am. Make sure you guys like and subscribe if you haven't already. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps to support my channel, because you guys already know I'd love to become a full-time YouTuber someday, but I cannot do it without your support. So I appreciate all the support that I've gotten so far in my journey of being a YouTuber. I appreciate it so much from you guys. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we are going to get into the Son of Dathomir comic, issue 1. There is like an intro at the beginning of the book, and I can almost imagine Tom Kane reading it in like the start of the Clone Wars episode that they would have done for this. All right, I'm going to try and do my best Tom Kane impression here. It's probably going to fail, but I want to read it for you guys so you guys understand what's going on here. I feel like we need a little Clone Wars music going, right? Like After surviving his confrontation with Obi-Wan Kenobi on Naboo and being saved from madness by the Dathomir witch Mother Talzin, Darth Maul has constructed a vast criminal syndicate known as the Shadow Collective, gathering the galaxy's most feared crime lords. Black Sun, the Pikes, and even the mighty Hutts have fallen in line behind the Dark Warrior. From a base of operations on the planet of Mandalore, Maul plots revenge against many of his enemies, but Maul's lust for power and conquest has drawn a great enemy upon him, his former master, Darth Sidious. Judging Maul a threat to his own designs, Sidious has defeated his former apprentice, ruthlessly murdering Maul's brother, Savage Opress, and leaving Maul beaten, but curiously, still alive and imprisoned. I did my best there, you guys, but there, you kind of got a general feeling of what's going on, right? In case you hadn't seen the Clone Wars episodes that had come before, that's kind of where we're at. So Maul being captured by Sidious, we saw Sidious defeat Savage, and this is now where we leave Maul, where we could have had continued Maul's story in the Clone Wars. And this is still canon, by the way, because this is referenced in the Siege of Mandalore. Stuff that happens in this comic is referenced in the Siege of Mandalore. So we start out on Stygian Prime, and it's the same prison that's in Star Wars Rebels in Season 1, where they go to rescue Luminara, if you guys have seen that episode, so you kind of know where we are right now. And Maul has been in prison, Sidious is there, and then Sidious ends up introducing his former apprentice to his new apprentice in Dooku. And Maul just kind of has like this disdained look for him, because he he's heard the name Dooku before from the Mandalorian. So he's like, oh, this is that Dooku guy that I've heard so much about. In a weird way, it kind of almost reminded me of like, okay, so there's two people in a relationship and one person breaks up they break up, and then one person gets with another person and then has to introduce that person to their ex. That's almost kind of what this reminded me of in a weird way. So then Sidious and Dooku have this discussion in like walking down the hallway of the Stygian Prime prison, talking about how Mother Talzin is still alive. Sidious is saying these things like, we have a big threat on our hands here, and that threat's Mother Talzin, and we need to like, take her out. But Dooku's just like, well, why don't we just send our armies there and crush her? And he's like, well, that's not going to be enough to defeat Talzin, which, you know what, he's very much right. So realizing that Talzin is a massive threat here, and the reason for Maul being resurrected in the first place, they have to come up with like this long-term plan to defeat her. So then we get a scene with Maul and Dooku where Dooku's essentially interrogating Maul. He's saying how like, the Hutts have abandoned you, Maul, but the Black Sun and the Pikes still remain loyal. He's like, I want all of your resources. I want your control over the black market, because of course Dooku would, being in his political state with the Separatists, he wants all of this control, all this power that Maul has. And Maul's essentially says without saying it, yeah, go to hell. And then Dooku force lightnings him and he's like, I'm gonna get what I want eventually. But then you guys, we are introduced to Saxon and Cass, all right? So the two Mandalorians that rescue Maul from this prison. They set up this whole operation and they end up rescuing Maul from prison. And for those who don't know, Saxon is obviously the same Saxon that we see in Star Wars Rebels. It's Gar Saxon. And we also see him in the Siege of Mandalore, along with Rook Kast as well. So like, I remember when I was watching the Siege of Mandalore episodes and I saw Saxon and Cass there, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're directly tying in with the Son of Dathomir comics. Like, that's so cool. For someone like me who had read the comic and has been a huge fan of it for a long time, it was very much a rewarding thing when they brought them into the Siege of Mandalore. So once Maul escapes, we end up getting a scene with Dooku contacting Grievous and his fleet. And it looks like Grievous is being sent to go hunt down and chase after Maul. But what Dooku ends up telling him is that he wants Grievous to not kill Maul, merely weaken him. He wants him in a weakened state. He wants his army in a weakened state. He wants Maul on the run. And Dooku has this nice line where he says, he will do what any child would. He will cry for help, which is essentially saying like, okay, once he loses, he's going to end up calling for Talzin's help. And that's going to draw Talzin out into the open. At least that's what they're making it sound like at this point. Grievous was probably sitting there thinking like, but I thought I took care of this woman. I took our armies to Dathomir, man. I took care of all the Night Sisters. I wiped them all out. So far, I like that this comic, and I say these episodes because this would have been in Clone Wars. I love how these episodes are centered around like all dark side people. You know what I'm saying? Like, there isn't any sign of like Republic or Jedi involved with this. It's been strictly Sidious and Dooku and Grievous and Maul. That's why I love this so much, and I really wish that we would have gotten this in the Clone Wars, because honestly, this probably would have been my favorite arc in Clone Wars besides the Siege of Mandalore, because I don't think anything can top that, but this would have come close. And then maybe Dark Disciple as a close third. So we go to the Shadow Collective base on Zambar, and the Shadow Collective being what Maul's group is known as, the Mandalorians, Pikes, Black Sun, all them, right? And they kind of reiterate, right, like the Hutts are no longer with them, but the Pikes and the Black Sun, they're still loyal. Maul ends up getting in contact with Almec. Almec ended up retrieving the Darksaber for Maul, so the Mandalorians gave that to him, which was really cool because we now get to see Darth Maul wielding the Darksaber, because like we get to see him use it in Clone Wars a little bit. Like, we see him use it to kill Satine, we see him use it to kill Vizsla, but like we don't really see him fighting much with it apart from his battle with Sidious. Maul has this incredible line to the Mandalorians, like where he hypes them up, kind of similar to what he does in Siege of Mandalore. And he says, "The war you've waited for your entire lives to fight is upon us, my brothers. Victory or death. And they all say victory or death. It's really cool. Maul knows how to speak the Mandalorians' language, man, when it comes to fighting and wars. And when you think about the Mandalorians and their arc so far in Clone Wars, like they've been craving for this fight, you know what I'm saying, to be able to take Mandalore and all that, which they finally did. And now it's like, okay, they're finally ready to start establishing their dominance, right? And now it's sort of like they've become a part of something bigger that could potentially rival the Separatists and the Republic, like this third sort of faction in the Clone Wars. Grievous just straight up wants everything deployed. He's like, you are going to send all my damn droids out there because we're not fighting clones. We're fighting Mandalorian warriors, okay? So I like that Grievous has that respect for them, because when you see Grievous in Clone Wars, like he's just constantly being like, you know, burying the clones, burying the Jedi, just being like, these guys suck. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, there's a future for no Jedi and stuff like that. I love Grievous in the micro series because he gives the Jedi a little bit more respect when he's like, I'm not completely without mercy. I will grant you a warrior's death. He doesn't do that in the Clone Wars. He's just like, I want the Jedi wiped out. I don't even give a fuck about giving them a fair fight. None of that. Like, I want them wiped out. Here, though, he actually gives the Mandalorians some respect where he's like, okay, we need to get everything we have out there because they are going to wipe us out if we don't. And even he admits that the odds aren't in his favor, which is definitely not a character trait for Grievous. Grievous has always been one of those characters that when he's losing, he runs. When he's in a losing predicament, in any stretch of the imagination, he runs. So for him to go, okay, there's a chance that we could lose here, but he goes through with this plan anyway, is very interesting. Granted, I know like it's kind of, he's just following orders, but it's still unlike Grievous to do. So we get this battle between the Mandalorians and the droids, and obviously because it's a comic, you only get like limited pictures and things like that, but I would have loved to have seen this in the Clone Wars, seeing Mandalorians using their jetpacks, using their blasters and whistling birds, taking out the battle droids and stuff. Like, that would have been so cool. They're flamethrowers. But what would have been even cooler to see in the Clone Wars, to see on a television screen, is Maul fighting Magma Guards, because that's what ends up happening. I think like 4 of them jump down and they start fighting Maul. Maul starts fighting them and slicing their body parts and their heads off. And then we get Maul versus Grievous, which I think is like the big part of this first issue. But we don't get much of it because, again, it's a comic. They only show so much. Seeing Maul versus Grievous is kind of like a dream matchup for me that I would have loved to have seen. And this was kind of the spot where they did it. Like, Grievous has his lightsabers out. Maul's got his darksaber. They're fighting each other. There's actually, before Grievous fights Maul, he takes his lightsabers and just impales them into this Mandalorian soldier. Like, that would have been sick to see on screen. And I think, you guys, the way that Grievous looked in this comic, because it's a lot closer to Revenge of the Sith, we probably would have gotten that sick looking Grievous that we got for like a mere second in the start of the first Siege of Mandalore episode, like in the opening intro. I think we would have gotten that Grievous and it would have looked sick. Grievous kind of taunts Maul and being like, look at you, your Mandalorians are starting to get wiped out, but look at my army is endless. But then Maul kind of has this nice moment where I could almost kind of see it being sort of like a comedy moment in the episode where Maul's just like, but Grievous, you see, my gauntlet fighters have yet to enter the battle. And then all of a sudden, all these gauntlet fighters come in and just start bombarding the area, and all the droids are getting like bombarded. I would have thought that would have been funny to see, you know, have Matt Wood be there like, as the battle droids, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think that would be kind of cool. That'd be funny. Maul just sitting there being like, yeah, you got all this, but I got this. And then, you know, gauntlet fighters bombarding the droids. I love it. And then Maul ends up retreating because clearly the droids were outnumbering the Mandalorians. They had to get out of there, so they pulled out a Zambar, and Zambar is now lost. And then in the final moment of issue 1, we get Dooku and Grievous having a discussion with each other, because once again, Dooku's there via hologram. And once again, you guys, another thing about Grievous, like I said, he doesn't normally do this stuff, but even Grievous was like, I took took out a lot of his forces, but I'm gonna be real, I merely wiped out all of my own. And Dooku was like, acceptable losses, General, because at the end of the day, Dooku wasn't concerned about how many droids that he lost. He was just concerned about wiping out Maul's people, making him run, making him want to plea for help, and everything that Grievous needed to do, he did. Also, a rare time where we actually get to see Grievous win a battle, because we hear about in Clone Wars how Grievous wins all these battles and things like that, but we never actually see it, because every time we see Grievous on screen, he's mostly losing. Towards the end of the Clone Wars, we start to see him win a few more battles, but like, especially in like season 1, he's just like constantly getting his butt kicked. And yeah, you guys, like I said, that wraps up issue 1 of the Son of Dathomir comic. I really hope you guys enjoyed our like discussion about this here today, because I want to come back and do this for the next few weeks for like the other issues of the comic, because trust me, this comic takes some turns as well. So I'm very excited to talk about each and every issue of this comic because of the fact that I love it so much. So make sure you guys, if you enjoyed this, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, share this video around as it really helps support the channel, and I will see you guys next time.